Today, we're making some garden risotto, one of my daughter's all-time favorites. It's very simple and the whole thing cooks in 15 minutes. Let's do it. First, we make our makeshift vegetable stock. Stove on, and we just bring some water to a boil. Today I have purple sprouting broccoli, but for me, tender stem broccoli works the best for this dish. For me, the florets are better off blanched and just served on its own. And very simple, we just dice them. Similar size to the peas so that they're all bite-sized. And we mince a bit of celery just to sweat them for some extra depth of flavors. You can add some minced shallots or minced onions, but for me, you're cutting up a whole onion for very little. I wouldn't bother. For the celery, you want them relatively fine. You can use a grater if you want as well, just to save you some time. Once the water's boiling, we add our diced broccoli and some frozen peas. Unless you have access to a pea farm, you're almost always better off with frozen peas because the moment they're picked, the sweetness goes downhill like this. And frozen peas, you could keep them in your freezer and they're ready anytime. Wonderful addition to toddler food. Amazing sweetness and beautiful vibrant color. So you want to blanch them just so that the broccoli is softened and they've imparted a tiny bit of sweetness to this liquid, which we'll use to cook our risotto. Once the broccolis are softened and the peas are bright green, we fish them out. You don't want to cook the crap out of them. You want them to still have a bit of a crunch and a bit of texture. Now we cook our risotto. Medium, high heat, olive oil in. And we add our minced celery to sweat. You want to hear a gentle sizzle, but what you're aiming to do is to cook them without color. You're not trying to brown the celery. You're trying to sweat them, evaporate the water content, concentrate their flavors. You can do this as fast, as slow as you wish. So if you're not confident with your control, lower the heat a bit. It'll take a tiny bit longer, but it'll be a bit more fail-proof. You just want to move them around. And this will impart some depth of flavors to the garden risotto. Perfect. If you ever feel like this is about to brown or burn, just lower the heat a tiny bit. And you'll know it's ready when you see steam stops to come up. That means most of the water content has been evaporated and the flavors have been concentrated. Now, we can add our arborio rice. And we toast them slightly so that they're also coated with this olive oil. Now, this is toddler food after all, so we're not going for some crazy al dente texture. We're cooking the rice. What I like to do is for the first half of the cooking time, I add about double the quantity of vegetable stock to the rice for it to cook. And after 5 minutes, I'll come back and start stirring it, rubbing the rice against each other, releasing the starch. And that's what's gonna give us that thick, sauce-like texture that we associate with a good risotto. So 5 minutes. After about 5 minutes, we start to play chef. This is normally when I invite my daughter to stand here and we cook together. That way I feel like they're more emotionally invested into the dish, so they would have to eat it, even if it sucked, but it won't suck. We start to move the grains around and help the starch release, and that will thicken the risotto, creating this wonderful, wonderful texture. Keep topping it up slowly, just enough to cover everything. It's a fun exercise. You're basically drawing a circle with your right hand and you're drawing a straight line with your left. When you go together, you get starch. If you get bored, you can switch. Actually, I don't know if I can switch. Okay, circle, line. Oh, this is hard. This is really hard. Back to normal. Now you all know I'm right-handed. You adjust the heat to your comfort level. So I'm happy at medium-high, but you can do it at a slower pace, especially because we're not aiming for al dente. There's no real restrictions on cooking time. Top up. If you're not used to making risotto, you can always find on the back of the label the actual cooking time required. So divided by 2, the first half is when you could just boil it with more water than you think you need, because you can always reduce. And you can even time the second half just to give yourself a better gauge in terms of how much water to add and how much time you really need to mother it. And of course, if you're in doubt, taste. Now, once you're happy with the doneness of the rice, we're finishing it by getting to the right consistency. So what is the right consistency? Well, for me, is when you try to draw a canal in between, they would part for a decent amount of time before coming back. So this is still very watery, so we can reduce a bit more. Same test, getting better. we're almost there. And again, to avoid burning, we reduce the heat by a bit. That's what you're looking for. Now, we add our frozen peas. Don't add all of them. You can always save some on the side and serve it to her or to him later. You want a nice balance between rice and vegetables. You don't want this to become a vegetable dish. Just enough time for them to warm up. They're cooked to perfection already, so again, perfect. Now we can plate. For risotto, I like to use a big plate and plate one thin layer. Not to win a Toddler's Michelin star, but actually to help the food cool down without the use of a fan, so that they don't stick together. And again, presentation is so important from my own experience for toddler food. And there you have it, my daughter's garden risotto. I really hope you enjoy. That's a wrap! Do I even need to take photos?